meeting of 500 people via the Zoom setting. It does feel a little bit awkward as I'm staring at a lot of little boxes and seeing folks, but I do appreciate your time this evening. So we've continued, I know, as all school districts have in not only the state of Illinois, but around the country to continue to do our very best here as we've mapped out plans for the fall. It is undoubtedly true that the end of last school year was not what we anticipated. Obviously, going into the school year, we did our very best to pivot when conditions drove us to remote learning, but we've spent a lot of time over the summer planning for multiple scenarios. As we've moved toward the beginning of the school year and some of the guidance that we're operating under has continued to evolve, we've been able to revise those plans and advance to the community the options that we shared a couple of weeks ago. I will openly say from the start, and based on feedback that we've gotten a ton of feedback all around these plans. We've got opinions on all sides of exactly how it is that we should go about opening schools, the best way to do that. And so it is crystal clear that we are not going to be able to advance a plan that is going to universally match perhaps everybody's expectations for what the school year should look like, but we've built a plan prioritizing a couple of things. Number one, safety of our students and staff, in making sure that what we do obviously is fully compliant with the health guidance and expectations we're going to follow. Two, we do want to maximize when possible in-person instruction, and we've really prioritized that at the elementary level, but also understand that when possible, we want to be in front of our students. And three, we've built plans that will allow us to adjust through the school year. So we know and we recognize that while we might be starting the school year with a particular plan, certainly health conditions and or guidance from our governing agencies could dictate the fact that we may need to move to a different plan during the year and either move to more remote e-learning instruction and or opportunities to bring more students into the building. And so important for us was to make sure that we built a plan that could evolve across those options. And so what we're going to do tonight is walk you through a couple of recent updates and then try to jump into the questions. I'm confident we're not going to be able to answer every question that's asked tonight, but we will continue to use both our FAQs and opportunities to respond individually to questions in an effort to get as many of those questions answered as we can, because we understand you have an important decision to make and want to do our very best to provide that information. So the information we're going to walk you through really quickly just at the beginning of the discussion tonight is information that was shared a little bit earlier this evening around some updates to our reopening plan and our schedules. And so we're going to walk you through those really quickly. Really, the focus of this session is on the secondary level, middle and high school, but we will walk through just a little bit of foundational information from all of our levels as we move forward. So our plan first at the early childhood level, thanks Erica. So our early childhood schedule has always been a 4-day-a-week schedule with a morning and an afternoon session. We've made a slight adjustment to build that off day to Wednesday of the week instead of Monday to bring it in line with a few of the other schedules, and that will allow for that midweek cleaning when we have less students in the building. At our elementary level, in-person instruction will happen 5 days a week, Monday, Tuesday, Thursday, and Friday. That day will be from 9:30 to 3:30 at our elementary buildings. And then on Wednesday, we're going to run a shortened day, moving all students home at 12:30. We are going to offer before and after school care, both before and after school on Monday, Tuesday, Thursday, and Friday, but with an extended schedule on Wednesday. especially given that school will be letting out early. And again, that shortened day on Wednesday is allowing us to attend to some e-learning opportunities, to make sure that we have that midweek opportunity to clean our buildings extra thoroughly and see that we make sure we address some of the needs of our students and our staff in terms of having a little break in the middle of the week. At the middle and the high school level, as we'd shared before, we are running a hybrid schedule. So students will be assigned to two cohorts, cohort A, cohort B, broken down by alphabet so that we can prioritize family attendance within the same days. That A cohort group will be in person on Monday and Thursday. The B group will be in person on Tuesday and Friday. And then on Wednesday, we will run an e-learning day with a synchronous schedule of experiences for periods 1 through 8 that will provide some opportunity for entire sections of students to be together that are otherwise split off for the hybrid schedule. Again, the day for in-person instruction, we will follow the same time schedule that we had followed before. Middle school 8 to 3, high school is 7:20 to 2:15. Again, during the e-learning days, the off days, students will be working independently through some class discussions, assignments, some asynchronous instructional opportunities that have been assigned. And again, I mentioned that Wednesday opportunity. We do have some programs that will be prioritized for 4-day-a-week in-person instruction based on student need, but those programs will also operate in the e-learning space on Wednesday. I'm going to hand it over to Melissa Murphy to provide a couple of updates on the virtual academy option at each of the levels, and then we'll transition back to the questions. So, Melissa.
Thank you, Dr. Schuler. The first 2 slides are specific to early childhood and elementary virtual academy. And since the last call we had was dedicated to those levels, we're going to move through these pretty quickly, but please know you received an email with a copy of this presentation. We're happy to answer specific questions around early childhood and elementary for families as well. But this gives you a high-level overview of what that virtual academy does look like for early childhood, where it would be a 2.5-hour day. We would be prioritizing those core content areas, and we would have whole group, small group, one-on-one instruction. Attendance would be taken, and we would have progress reports aligned to the early learning standards. Next slide. Here again, a high-level overview of the elementary virtual academy. Here, it's different than the spring where we have the 5 clock hours of learning. We'd have a dedicated teacher for each group of students. Kindergarten, though, half-day kindergarten is shorter. It should be noted we've increased the number of digital resources that are available to our elementary teachers for them to use in our virtual academy. And grading and attendance practices would be similar to what we have always had and not as they were during the e-learning time period. Next slide. Here you'll see an outline of our middle school virtual academy program. It is a requirement from the Illinois State Board of Education that students have 5 clock hours of learning experiences daily. We will be prioritizing the core academic subjects of language arts, math, science, social studies, PE, art and music, and then our special education and EL services would be also provided within our virtual academy. There's really 2 directions that we can take for the virtual academy at the middle school. We would prefer and would prioritizing a team of teachers to work with a group of students, but this is all going to be based on enrollment. So it is possible we may need to utilize an online course provider, especially if there is a low enrollment overall or a low enrollment in specific courses. And if this was the case, it would be mostly self-directed asynchronous work. But our virtual academy will follow a standard schedule that will be provided to families. Grading and attendance will go back to the way it was, where it will follow our District 200 practices. as well as we would be utilizing teacher-created assessments, district assessments. And for our students that are enrolled in the virtual academy, they will have that opportunity to participate in extracurriculars that will be offered next year.
Mrs. Murphy, before we go on to the next slide, could you just quickly for us define what is synchronous learning and what is asynchronous learning?
Absolutely, thank you so much. Synchronous learning is time-bound, and so a lot of times families think about this as that Google Meets or that Zoom call where there's live instruction. Asynchronous learning is more independent and it is not time-bound, so a lot of times this could be independent work or could be a recorded video that students watch on their own time. For our high school virtual academy, again, there really are two paths that we are looking at, and this is all going to be involved with how many students are enrolled in our virtual academy and is specifically by course. So our first option is we would be utilizing an online course provider, and this would allow our students a little bit more flexibility and self-direction in terms of throughout their day. This would still be supervised by a District 200 teacher, and please note we have a team of teachers that have expertise in online teaching who are working right now to research different providers and vet those programs to recommend to our Board of Education. Our second option would be if the enrollment is high for our virtual academy for certain courses, and our teachers would be dedicated to teaching those, and that would include more live or synchronous instruction. They would follow a regular schedule, but this is where our EL and special education services will be provided by our District 200 teachers in that virtual academy. There's a lot of elements that are common to both, and that would be our grading and attendance practices will be different than they were in the spring. They will be in line with what District 200 practices have been in the past. We will be creating schedules based on what the student's current schedule is, what they need for graduation requirements, or similar course alternatives. Again, it's a required 5-hour day. The high school students will be allowed to participate in extracurriculars that will be offered. And it should be noted that AP courses will be offered in the virtual academy. Those could be through an online course provider, or they be offered by our District 200 instructors.
Thank you, Dr. Schuler and Mrs. Murphy. I want to draw your attention to the screen. This link has been shared out multiple times in our communications and online. On this section of our website, cusd200.org/reopening plans, you'll find our current reopening plan document, the slides that we went through today, several other videos, and then some FAQs surrounding our current plans, and we do plan to update those regularly, and certainly after sharing out more information today, we know we will need to update those very soon with the questions that have come in. So how is this going to work moving forward, this meeting? The meeting is, we will end about 8:15. We are recording this meeting for families who are not able to participate or join in. All participants will remain muted other than the hosts. If you have a question, please put it in the chat bar and include the name of your school. So for example, my children go to Westbrook, Erica Liacono, Westbrook. Messages can only be sent to hosts, but please make sure you send them to me so that we can make sure that your question gets asked. And we will answer them in the order they were received. If we feel that a question has already been answered, we will move on to the next question. And if it's building specific, we will notate it and pass it along to your building principal. Also, please know we will have a transcript of all the questions that were asked so that if we don't get to yours today, we'll make sure to be able to get to them at some point. So I'm going to jump over to the chat bar, and then what I'm going to just do is push out the questions to various hosts to answer. Dr. Schuler, I'm going to give this one to you. Can you talk a little bit about then if there is a confirmed case in a specific classroom at a school, what will the notification process, communication process look like?
Great question. So when we have a confirmed case, we have a dedicated district nurse that will play point around all contact tracing and all communication on this. And so we will immediately execute with support of the health department the contact tracing expectations to understand who that student may have been in close contact with. Certainly those students and families will be notified of the case and the close contact so that those students can quarantine. In terms of the issue of mass notification, there's two things that we're going to balance in that. One, whenever we're talking about a health issue, there is some degree of right to privacy that we're going to balance with making sure that we provide appropriate notification to those that may have been in contact. And so my expectation and my understanding is that we are going to be as liberal as we can in terms of sharing information, especially with obviously families that may have been in close contact. But there is a very specific definition as well of what a close contact means. It's an individual that would have been within 6 feet of that individual for a sustained period of 15 minutes or longer. And so incidental contact, passing a student in the hallway, passing them in or out of the building wouldn't end up falling into that criteria. But again, we have a district nurse that's been assigned to play point specifically around helping us with both contact tracing and notification.
Thank you. Dr. Kyle, I'm going to give this one to you. How will orchestra and band work with alternating schedules?
Right now, we have a committee of 512 orchestra and band teachers that are meeting. There are some studies out there that we're utilizing, as well as ISB, CDC guidelines. It's going to be a little bit different. That is the answer I can give you right now, but we're working with the actual orchestra and band teachers right now to see what it's going to look like next year and make sure we continue to have orchestra and band for next year.
Thank you. This next question, I might need Dr. Szilagyi and Mrs. Murphy to tag team this one. I have an incoming 9th grader and an incoming 6th grader, and I'm going to participate in the virtual academy. What social support will be there in the virtual academy for new middle and high schoolers?
I mean, I think the first piece, and Melissa, I'll let you chime in after I go here. For any of our students, no matter what option you choose, there's going to be an adult that we're going to work to connect them to. So in our in-person instruction piece, we map our relationships with kids to ensure that they have a trusted adult. I foresee that same work happening in the virtual world. While connection's a little bit different, it's still going to be really important. So from an adult connectivity and a trusted adult piece, making kids feel secure and safe, that's going to be our goal no matter what experience the child is in. As far as social support services that are available to students, certainly if our students need outside support or different pieces to talk with a counselor or a social worker, we will make that available as well. I'll stop there and let Mrs. Murphy take the other part of the question.
Sure. In addition to everything Dr. Szilagyi say, we know classroom culture, no matter whether you are in person or in an online space, is absolutely important and essential. And this is something that our teachers were working on even during our e-learning time period. And we had a team of teachers that came together at our middle school and high school and really brainstormed some really phenomenal ways to create classroom culture that can be transferred to our virtual academy as well.
Thank you. Dr. Schuler, what if a family member tests positive that's not in the school and the child is in person class with no symptoms? Can the student switch to virtual? I guess maybe that's for Mrs. Murphy too.
Yeah, I think there's two layers to the question. I think one has to do with perhaps the conditions under which somebody would be excluded. And again, if it's a family member that tests positive, it is pretty assured that most of the individuals in that household are going to be determined to have been a close contact and would likely be asked to quarantine for the required period of time. moving back and forth across in-person and the virtual experience is going to be difficult because they're two different classes. So it would be akin to taking a student for 2 weeks and moving them out of one class and assigning them to another class and trying to bring them back. So if we have students that are attending in person and have to be absent for a period of time, we're going to support that student in the way that we would a full in-person individual that's out. So the tools that are going to be available to teachers, the tools that are going to be able to be used in that hybrid experience are going to allow for a lot more electronic access to resources. But I would anticipate that student would be supported while they're absent through their classroom teachers, the teachers they're assigned to in the in-person.
Thank you. Dr. Kyle, how will distancing be maintained and monitored in bathrooms and possibly other areas that are not usually heavily adult monitored?
Well, obviously 6 feet social distancing is the guidelines that we're going to go by. We anticipate, since we do have a hybrid model, to have some extra sets of eyes at both the high school and the middle school next year to make sure there are people watching maybe areas that weren't before. One idea too is we've been talking about at the middle school and high school level is have the kids go from one class to another and have bathroom sign-ins and sign-outs so we know who goes to the bathroom. So if we ever did have a situation where somebody did have or had the diagnosis of COVID-19, we could do tracing. So we do have some extra people that we do feel we could utilize for more sets of eyes in the hallway. And we really have to make sure we can't have groups of more than 50 together. So we have built that in at the high school and middle school as students come to make sure that they're moving on from class to class.
Thank you. Mrs. Murphy, if we choose to start in person but change our mind, would we be able to switch to the virtual academy? I'm having a hard time deciding.
Right, we've gotten this question quite a bit, and it's certainly a difficult decision. And so we would ask, once you've registered, that commitment needs to be in place for a semester at our middle school and our high schools for scheduling purposes and staffing purposes.
Melissa, this is for you too. Will all courses be offered in middle school virtual academy, such as fast-paced math and reading?
Great question. And so we are committed to providing our core courses, and we are anticipating offering PACE. Now, specifically in the area of math, we know those students are working a year ahead, and that is important for those to continue on that course track. So we are still working on the details of the other pieces of our PACE programming.
Next question's for Mr. Farley. Who will be responsible for cleaning student desks and chairs in between classes in such a short amount of time?
Every room will have hand sanitizers on the wall. We will also have spray bottles of disinfectant that will be available in the classrooms and wipes that can be used. We don't have the custodial manpower to clean each classroom between each passing period, but we will have product available for adult use in the classroom.
Mrs. Murphy, approximately how many hours on instruction will be live if choosing the virtual academy?
So this will be dependent on in each course. So just a reminder, there's 2 ways we can go. So some courses may rely on an online course provider. If that's the case, it will be asynchronous in nature, almost exclusively. If it is a course that has high enrollment, then our District 200 teachers will be teaching that course, and there will be more live instruction. And so I would say approximately 20% of that time would be dedicated to live instruction if a District 200 teacher was overseeing that course.
Chris, I know you've been working with our health services chair on the answer to this question, and it is in our FAQ, but it is very frequently asked. If someone is returning back to school from quarantine, what will the requirements be for reentry?
Yeah, so if they're returning from quarantine, I think there's 2 pieces. If they were quarantining because they had a positive test, or not. So with not having a positive or having a positive test, you have to have quarantine for 14 days and be symptom free and have a no symptoms as well for 3 days. For 10 days you would be quarantined, and then the 3 days you would have to be symptom free before being able to return. And the same would be for quarantine for somebody who was in close contact as well. It's a 14-day quarantine and symptom free for at least those 72 hours as of now. We'll continue to follow CDC guidance on that, but right now that's where the quarantine piece is at.
Just give me 1 minute. Some of these questions are repeats, so I'm just trying to sift through them. Charlie, I'm gonna give this one to you. Is there any chance of having students, this is a middle school parent, but I'm sure it would apply to high school as well. Is there a chance of having kids stay static for the entire day so they're not mixing with so many other kids and have the teachers rotate rooms? Well, go ahead and answer that one.
I can answer that. The high school and the middle school. Elementary, where you can have all the students with one teacher, it's a little bit easier. The middle school, the variations of the courses that we offer, and high school even worse. It's not possible and it's not easy to make sure that the teachers go room to room and the students stay the same place. So that is why we went with the hybrid version, obviously with the 6 feet social distancing, and students move from class to class with masks, cutting down their exposure to other students.
Charlie, will all kids eat staggered in the cafeteria, or will some eat in their classrooms?
That's a good question. Both high schools and middle schools have found areas where they can have 50 or less students and adults in one area. We have multiple rooms identified at all 4 middle schools and high schools. We also are working on the supervision in those areas as well. And just so parents are aware, there will be 6 feet social distancing in all the rooms that students will be eating.
Thank you. Melissa, I believe you touched on this, but it's a very direct question that we get very often. If Virtual Academy is selected, will students from the same school be in the same virtual classes?
This is a great question. Because the Virtual Academy is a district-wide program, students from across the district will be grouped together for courses. So it would contain students from all of our middle schools and also both of our high schools put together in courses.
Melissa, I'm going to give this one to you too. Will siblings be on the same schedule?
I'm assuming
The
that
middle and high level.
I'm assuming this question is for an in-person instruction. And so for in-person instruction, we have prioritized so that siblings can attend on the same days.
Thank you. Charlie, what will students be doing for gym if they can't change their clothes?
Yeah, right now we have groups, 612 PE teachers getting together to talk about the guidance from ISB with physical education. So they will be working through different various exercises and obviously looking at the whole health part of physical education as well. So they're going to work on that. We do have a team. I don't have the specific answer right now, but without lockers, they're going to be working on making sure that all students have PE and they're active, but not the same ways they've been active before.
Thank you. Chris, I know you've been working on the self-certification waiver that we're working on. So this speaks to that question. Is there a plan for daily morning screening of students for COVID-like symptoms? How will that symptom screening process work?
Yeah, we actually have a self-certification form that lists all the symptoms currently of COVID-19, and it's an agreement that we'll have with our parent community and our students to certify that if you're sending your student to school that they are not experiencing any of those symptoms. So we will be sending that out to our parents prior to the start of the school year.
Thank you. Melissa, will health class be offered in the Virtual Academy?
Yes, we do anticipate offering our health class in the Virtual Academy.
What e-learning platform will we use, Melissa?
This is a good question. In terms of students receiving assignments, we will utilize our Google Classroom, but then in terms of curriculum, we are in the process of researching and vetting different online course providers. We are utilizing a team of teachers who has expertise in this area. We've vetted probably about 8 different programs, and we're down to about 2 or 3 that we really like, and we're spending quite a bit of time making a selection so that we can bring that recommendation to our Board of Education very soon.
Melissa, this is probably for you too. If my student is enrolled in the virtual academy, but the district as a whole needs to move to e-learning, can my academy student move back to their classroom e-learning experience?
We get this question quite a bit. If this were the case, we would continue to keep those 2 groups of students separated to continue with the regular programming that we have put together and have in place. We feel like at this time that would be the best course of action for us, is to continue to keep those students on the paths that they would be in, which it would be the in-person learning experience and the virtual academy experience.
Thank you. I'll go ahead and take this one. Are there plans for online, i.e. Zoom, for parent-teacher conferences, curriculum night? We don't have any plans specifically laid out. We would imagine that certain schools are going to elect to go certain different directions, but to the extent we're able, we will still try to provide those type of opportunities for parents to engage with their school and their child's teacher. It will just look different this year. So we do know, we have started talking with principals about that, because we do know we probably will not be able to have the traditional back to school night, curriculum night. And so principals are already starting to think through some of those, what could those opportunities look like in a virtual setting? Sorry, I'm just reading through these. Melissa, will AP courses be offered for hybrid and virtual academy?
Yes, our plan is to offer them in both the virtual academy and also our in-person instruction. That would be the hybrid model.
There's a question, is the cohort decided by last name or first name? That is last name, but we will have to work with families, because we do know that there are some households where students may not have the same last name. Sorry, a lot of these are, Melissa, will the business incubator course be offered in the virtual academy?
I have to say, this is the first time I've actually gotten this question. It is a really good question that I do not have the answer to today, but I'm going to ask the person who did ask this question to email me directly, and I will work with them to get an answer for that.
Dr. Schuler, can you talk to us a little bit about the face covering requirement and some work that we're doing around that, and how will we kind of work with families whose maybe students don't want to wear the mask?
Yeah, well, so wearing a face covering isn't a choice. That is an expectation for all school districts and for all in-person instruction. We do know that there are some situations where we will need to work with families that may have a specific medical condition or concern that we problem solve around. There are some other PPE options that we may need to explore with individual families, but the expectation across the board will be that a student's wearing a face covering. If a student and or a parent simply indicates that a student's not going to do it, then we'll guide that family toward the virtual academy. It's not an option inside the schools.
Chris, I'm going to give this one to you. The question kind of surrounds for sixth graders, maybe for either virtual academy or on those online days where, because it's a younger grade level, support and keeping the child directed. Are we working with any of our partners to explore childcare opportunities or other opportunities to support those online days?
Yeah, we're in the process of looking into what some of the childcare provider pieces could be. So looking to form some partnerships with places like our park district, possibly some of our churches in the community. So that's a work in progress right now as we talk about partnerships for childcare and support for e-learning on those days that are hybrid days or the e-learning days.
Dr. Schuler, do we have an estimate of the number of students who are electing to enroll in the hybrid model versus virtual academy?
We've got the data that we're monitoring. I think as of beginning of this week, we've got a little less than half of our families that have completed the registration process. We've got about 10% of the families that have elected for the virtual academy of those that have registered.
Charlie, what is the plan for extracurricular activities and athletics?
And we're watching IHSA and the governor's guidance on fall, winter, and spring sports. So we are looking at that, extracurriculars as well. We're going to follow the same health and safety protocols that we have in stage 4 in Illinois and the ISBE to make sure that in-person class, and we still have that opportunity, that kids will be able to play sports and be in activities. If that does change and we go online learning, obviously we'll develop a plan for that as well, but we are planning for athletics and activities right now.
Thank you. The next one's for Mr. Farley. Can you talk a little bit about the safety measures that will be put into place during transportation, i.e. bus service?
Sure. We are going to be having no more than 49 students on a bus. Students are required to wear masks. We are going to work with the schools to have seating charts. We're going to try and set those up by kind of like plane loading with students that enter the bus, go to the back and fill forward so they're not walking by each other. We are going to have cleaning protocols that'll be in place during the midday and at the end of the school day. For the buses as well. We are going to have the windows down in the buses. The drivers will have the windows down on days that obviously we can do that. Won't be doing that in the middle of winter, but we will have the windows lowered in each bus.
Next question is for Charlie. Can you talk a little bit about what the plans are for TCD, both in the hybrid option, Technology Center of DuPage, both in the hybrid option and the virtual academy?
Yeah, I can speak right now. I know TCD is working on their final schedule of how they're going to offer for the for next year. So we're working closely with TCD. Right now, we will have a bus for both hybrid A and B to deliver our students from our 2 high schools to TCD. Virtual Academy, that is a piece we're working on right now with the executive director of TCD and what those offerings would be. So don't have an answer for the second part. For the first part though, we will be sending kids to TCD when they're in person.
Thank you. Dr. Schuler, are there any protocols in place for staff or students who have traveled to hotspots?
We'll work with the DuPage County Health Department on that. They would establish any protocols that we would need to follow in terms of exclusion of students that have traveled to particular zones. So right now they do not, but if that changes, we will certainly partner with them to execute any expectations.
Dr. Kyle, was there any, this is a scheduling question, was there any consideration given to having the cohorts attend school on consecutive days with the cleaning in between on Wednesdays?
We looked at a lot of plans when we started this with ISB guidance and CDC guidance. And obviously with 6 feet social distancing, we came with the hybrid model. We talked to our teachers about last spring and kind of transitioning to e-learning. One of the reasons why we didn't stick with AA, e-learning, BB, is because you could be missing kids for 3 or 4 days at a time. And we really pushed on that opportunity to be able to see our students, not between a computer and a person, but in person every other day. And that's why we landed on that.
Thank you. Next one's for Mr. Farley. Are fees being adjusted for next school year?
Good question. Yes, we normally release the fees June 1st. We decided at that time to push that to September 1st to allow us to evaluate what the program is going to look like in the fall. And so we are in the process of evaluating that currently, and we'll have updates as we get closer to September 1st.
The next one, I'll give to Charlie. I'm guessing this answer is no. Will there still be, this is from Hubble, but I'm assuming there might have been other dates for other schools floating out there. Will there still be a schedule pickup in person on August 10th in time for them to walk through their schedule as new 6th graders?
I know middle schools and high schools right now are putting plans together. Anything that's obviously over 50 students, we can't do right now. So some are virtual at different buildings. I know that those buildings at the high school level, and I believe at the middle school level, unless I'm missing something, Melissa, they're working on how to create those virtually, or if it's in person, it's got to be under 50.
Thank you. Charlie, talk a little bit about how lunch will work at both the middle and high schools.
Yeah, obviously you want the students to wash their hands before they eat. There'll be different areas at all the middle schools and high schools that we've got sectioned off with enough room for 50 students and 6 feet social distancing, because that's an opportunity. You can't eat with your mask on, so students are going to have their mask off, eat. We'll have supervision, and we'll have rooms dedicated to eating. And then also in between each lunch at the middle school and high school, we will make sure we have custodians cleaning the tables to make sure when the next group comes in, we've done the cleaning in between.
Jeff, what is the cutoff number, percentage of cases before we fall back into total remote or e-learning?
Yeah, it's a fair question, and I understand the ask. I will tell you that there is not a set number. Again, our district's health point will work with the county health department as we track cases to determine what and when we may need to close an area of a building or an entire building. I think a decision to move the entire school district back into to e-learning would likely be made at the state level, but a decision to perhaps close a building down for a short period of time, either to execute contact tracing and or to execute a particular cleaning protocol, that would be made by the health department. And again, I don't know that there's a set number. They have not said, gosh, if it's 2 cases, we're going to shut down. It's going to depend on the contact of the individual who's the confirmed case with other students and how many people then need to be excluded from school. So that does come back to especially inside the classroom, that close contact over that sustained period of time would happen in the classroom if we tried to operate with more students than we could keep 6 feet apart at the secondary level.
Chris, can you talk a little bit about physical distancing practices in the classroom? And then after that, talk a little bit more about what passing periods will look like.
Yeah, physical distancing practices in the middle school and high school classrooms do have our seats 6 feet apart. Again, because our students are moving, we have to ensure that the seats are 6 feet apart, and also that our teachers have that space as well, a minimum of 6 feet apart. passing periods, we want those to be as efficient and as quickly as possible. Obviously, we'll have our hallways marked with the center line and spaces to encourage physical distancing. And truthfully, it is about getting to your classroom as quickly as possible with your face covering on, as quickly as possible to minimize the time within the transition.
Dr. Kyle, you oversee human resources. Have staff been surveyed regarding their preferences regarding returning to in-person instruction?
Yeah, we just got done surveying our staff, and that survey just closed this past Saturday. So we have surveyed our staff, and we're in the process right now of balancing staff with the amount of students that choose academy or in person. So we're in the process right now of matching those two.
Mrs. Murphy, will this type of hybrid schedule allow the district to cover all reading and math standards for middle school?
This is a great question. So we actually have teams of teachers right now working to determine the essential standards that will be taught in all of our courses. And I believe this was a middle school question. And so those teachers are working to identify those essential standards that are the priority. And we also know that we have our district assessments to determine that our students have mastered that essential content.
Thank you. Dr. Kyle, I'm going to give this one to you. How are the SAT, ACTs being handled?
Yeah, last spring, SAT, ACT were canceled due to the condition that the state was in. I do know there's more information about possible fall testing. And obviously we're looking at that, and depending on where we are in the state, it'll depend if we could still offer that at the high school level. But I have seen some information on that. And Melissa Murphy, if you've seen anything more, please speak
Yeah,
up.
absolutely. I can add into this. Actually, Julie Ozymkowski, who's our director of assessment, has been working with the high school team specifically around processes and procedures for the SAT. And so I would be happy to have her answer those questions. If somebody would like to contact me directly, I can work with Julie to get them the specific answers around the plans and processes in place around SAT.
Oh, I put Melissa's email address in there and then I lost where I was in the chat bar. Just give me 1 second. Lots of questions about sports and clubs and activities.
Hey,
Dr.
Erica,
Kyle, there was a
wait,
question.
hey, Erica, while you're there, if there were a lot of questions on sports clubs and activities, again, Charlie mentioned it earlier. Two different categories of those activities. There are the activities that are governed through IHSA, and we will follow whatever the guidance is from the state association in terms of whether or not those can happen. We still recognize the value that comes from the connection of kids to the school building and to adults through those activities. And so we are working with our staff to brainstorm other opportunities for how it is that we may still be able to accomplish that, even if some of the activities can't happen in the way that they traditionally have. So again, the short answer is we don't have a definitive plan on exactly what that can look like, but our every effort is going to be made to provide that opportunity for connectedness to adults through a different format, even if it's virtual.
Dr. Kyle, can you talk about locker usage?
All right.
Be able
I'm
to
working.
use lockers.
Well, I know right now for PE, we are not going to be using lockers. The middle school has talked a little bit about possibly using a locker in the morning with a coat and then pick it up at the end of the day. High school last we were working on is we are not going to be using lockers next year. High school students will be bringing their coat and their backpack from class to class. So we are going with the recommendation of trying to limit the utilization of any lockers for next year.
Mrs. Murphy, are virtual academy classes at a certain time, or is it more like doing it in your own time as long as you do it by the end of the day?
This is a great question. So if the course is going to be offered through the online course provider, then it would fall into that category where there would be daily assignments, but students would have a lot of flexibility on how they would approach that. If the courses were taught by our District 200 teachers, there would be some scheduled live synchronous opportunities that would be expected, but there'd be a lot of flexibility in terms of how they work through the day's assignment.
Next question is for Erica Ekstrom. A couple of questions about students with special education needs or medical needs, and how those accommodations and exceptions can be made.
So when we return to school in the fall, every student's IEP and 504 plan will be reviewed by their special education team and their 504 plan, and the students' individualized education plan and 504 plan will be updated for remote learning, e-learning, and hybrid learning, and parents will receive an updated copy of that IELP and that IE 504. And we encourage parents to reach out to their teams and their case managers to provide input regarding what needs they see their students needing in this virtual learning environment or in this hybrid schedule.
Thank you. Dr. Kyle, this is similar to the question about band and orchestra, but we specifically answered about band and orchestra. Can you talk about what choir classes will look like this year?
Yeah, I think with all three classes, they're going to be different next year. I have had the opportunity to speak with the vocal music teachers last week, and I'm going to be meeting with the 612 choir teachers. Actually, there's a study that's coming out on July 25th. So or actually July 24th. So we're meeting after the study comes out to see what the effects of singing and COVID are, and then we're going to plan what choir is going to look like accordingly. Obviously, the first thing we're going to use is the ISB guidance, CDC, but also there are some national studies for band and choir and what the best way to do that. So we are planning choir next year. It's going to be different, and we're working through it.
Next question is for Melissa Murphy. My students will have e-learning online days for the hybrid model, online days on Mondays. When will the teachers push out the lesson for the children to complete? Will they be learning the same information that the kids in school will be learning?
Great question. So there's two parts to this. So we will have all assignments posted at the start of each school day. And so the second part of the question would be that there would be different learning on the days that will be asynchronous. So we are going to be prioritizing those lessons that are important to be in person. And then the teachers are going to be very strategic about what are those learning opportunities that will work well in that e-learning environment. So the lesson plan will actually be different between what's in person and online. So that will flip between the two cohorts of students when they are in those two different learning days.
Next question is, will PPE be provided to the teachers? So in addition to the state of Illinois providing a face covering for every staff member and student in the district is also going to provide a face covering for all students and staff. And certainly any supplies that any of our staff need, whether it's for PPE, our health offices staff, or any of our cleaning supplies, the district will provide. In our reopening plan document on our website, if students or staff choose to wear their own mask, there is a set of guidelines that we suggest for those face coverings. Melissa, can you talk a little bit about science labs and how physical distancing will be maintained, but also like a lot of times in the labs, materials are shared?
Yeah. What I'm going to say is we are actually working with a team of teachers right now to put practices and policies in place around science labs. And so we're going to have more information about exactly what that will look like as our team of teachers are working through that.
Thank you. Dr. Schuler, this one's for you. Is our start date for schools still August 17th?
As of right now, we haven't moved that start date, but we were actually looking at the very real possibility that we may need to adjust that back a little bit as we work through both this registration process and then all of the details that are associated with getting kids slotted into their in-person classes or the virtual academy. One, we're not going to compromise the ability to make sure that we're ready to open schools with all of the details worked out. So the short answer to it is we haven't changed that date yet, but we are looking at the very real possibility that it may need to be pushed back or delayed if we need a little bit of time to finalize all of the details that go into this.
Dr. Kyle, if my child will be in the virtual academy, will they still be able to participate in band or orchestra?
Yes, so that question's been asked a lot. I've gotten it about 4 or 5 times. Yes, they can. That is an opportunity for them. We would have to work through that, but that would be an opportunity for them.
A lot of the same questions, so I'm just question for Rodney.
Can I edit my answer real quick, Erica?
Go
Just
ahead.
the caveat with that is obviously the students that pick in person, and some of these classrooms are measured out at 6 to 10 feet, depending on the fine arts, choir and band, if you want more distance. So it always, the in-person students would obviously have first priority. But if it's virtual and we had room, we would look and see if that could work.
Okay, I've got 2 final questions that we'll get to. Rodney, for students who enroll in the virtual academy, will a device or a Chromebook be provided?
Yes.
Okay. And all students will be issued a district device, and at the middle and high school level, we'll be able to take those home with them each night in the high
Correct.
school option.
Correct.
Melissa Murphy, will there be driver's ed this fall semester? Can you talk about what that answer is both in the hybrid and in the virtual academy?
Right, so there will be driver's ed in our hybrid situation. In terms of virtual academy, that's something we're looking into, and we're unable to say that that would be a part of our course offerings in the virtual academy at this time because of the very careful placement of students in courses and the limited number of students that actually need to be in a car for driver's ed. If we have space, we'd like to allow that to happen, but we can't make that guarantee at this time for the virtual academy.
Okay, and I'm going to actually ask one more question only because this was one of the frequently asked questions we've gotten in this call, and I just am still getting a couple of those in the chat bar just now. So can we clarify, Dr. Schuler, if I start in person and I am uncomfortable and I want to move to the virtual academy, can I do that?
Short answer to that is if we can accommodate that. If we've got space, we will make an effort to accommodate that. Again, once we have slotted kids into both the virtual academy and the classes that are offered in person, as we would during the school year with a full in-person opportunity, if we have space, we will make every effort to make adjustments, but I cannot promise that there will be space. It would likely be easier going that direction from in-person to virtual than the other way around, just given the limitations around class size in person. So more likely that we'd have flexibility that direction, but it would be space dependent.
Thank you. And there are a couple of hundred questions or a couple hundred chats still in the chat bar that we have not gotten to. We are at the end of our Zoom meeting time today. please know we are working very, very hard. We've received hundreds and hundreds of questions. We are very fortunate in District 200 to have a very engaged parent and staff community. And so we want to truly thank you for being engaged and asking your questions. We are working very hard to get those answers to all of them. I know a lot of the questions covered in today's meeting are on our FAQ document, or answers are located in other presentations we've put out, but there's been so much information put out that we know that it's kind of difficult to navigate through all of the information. And so we are committed to being very creative in how we're communicating and engaging our families, whether that's at the district level or as we get closer to the school year, most likely be more from your school building. But we are working very hard to make sure that we get answers to all the questions that families may have. And so, like I said, we do have a transcript of the chat bar today, and we are going to continue to update those FAQs on our website. And if you still have questions that you need answers to, please email them to, I'll put it in the chat bar now while Dr. Schuler closes us out, to the communications email address. Go ahead, Dr. Schuler.
Thanks, Erica. So I just reiterate the thank you for your time and for the questions. You have our commitment that we will continue to do the very best that we can for our community. As I stated at the beginning, there are a lot of different perspectives, thoughts, opinions around exactly how school should look here in the fall, and ways that the plans should be modified. And we don't have the capacity to offer a fully individualized program for every one of our students, but we're going to continue to do the best that we can to provide an experience that both meets the educational needs of our students, but first and foremost, keeps our students and our staff safe. So thanks for your time tonight, and we'll continue to do our best to answer questions. Please remember the registration process. If you haven't yet, please get in and answer those registration questions. We greatly appreciate it.